It's to be instructed or to be skillful. It's a pupil. It's someone who learns or teaches. It's someone who pays attention or considers or teaches. It's a pupil, someone who is taught. The idea of Mamparo when Jesus talks, right before the time of Jesus, would be somebody, a lower person, coming to a master to say, please, I am worthy to become your Mamparo, your pupil. I should be, please, if I were to come to Nick, say, Nick, I want to learn basketball from you. I am worthy of your expertise because I train every day, I eat really healthy, I try not to eat too many donuts, and I really need your help. If you come and teach me basketball, I am not going to let you down. I'm going to be the next Kobe Bryant. I guarantee it. I can promise you that because I know under your tutelage I can do that. So it's me trying to sell myself as the learner to the master. Jesus, when he says make disciples, Jesus patterns something completely different and opposite with his disciples. Think of the disciples that Jesus made. Think of the folks he's talking to when he says, go therefore make disciples. What are some of the characteristics of Jesus bringing them on board to it? How many people sold themselves to Jesus as this excellent rabbi above everybody? Not many. What do you know about the disciples? What are some of their characteristics, their backgrounds?
Abrasive.
Abrasive? Yeah. Yeah. What else? If you could look on the Instagram profiles of all the disciples, what would the Instagram feeds be of the disciples before they met with Jesus?
Everything else is sinful, I think.
Yeah, sinful? They would have issues? Money? Yeah. In Dubai recently, there was a teacher teaching at an English-speaking school. So teachers, don't mean to scare you about this, but they had posted something 9 years ago. They had posted something, and then at the end of their post, they had included a rainbow or something that was LGBT supported, right? It was just a rainbow. Well, someone in their class uncovered their post from 9 years ago. That this person was called out in front of the whole school, this teacher. They'd only been teaching 1 year in Dubai. But because of their past, they were called out, they were fired, and they were deported the next day, blacklisted from returning into the country. I think that if we were to see the posts of the disciples, there'd be a lot. Tax collectors, sinners, nobodies, abrasive, loudmouth, arrogant, kind of dense sometimes. They don't get it. And yet Jesus doesn't tell them, prove yourself to me. Jesus tells them, make disciples. Jesus is the first one that flips this rabbi tradition on its head, and Jesus actually calls them to make disciples instead of saying, prove it to me. So Jesus is saying, make disciples, and then afterwards says, go, baptize, and teach. So in your going, in your baptizing, it's ongoing, that's right. It's ongoing to baptize and teaching. So the only command Jesus gives in this passage is to make disciples. It's the only imperative. The behold is written in the imperative in Greek, but the way that it's written, it's not an imperative of command. It's a different kind of imperative. So Jesus is only saying make disciples, which involves, in the going about of your life, baptize them, and then teach them. Teach them what? Teach them everything I've commanded you, which is above all to make disciples. What do you notice about the end of the passage? Behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age. Why do you guys think Jesus ends it with that?
Some encouragement that you're not by yourself. Because here's all this really, really difficult things to do. That would be very overwhelming. but I'm with you. He doesn't say it's going to be easy, but he does say I'm with you.
Think of a time when you felt alone. Maybe it's when you first moved as a first-time migrant. Maybe it was yesterday. Anytime in between. Think of a time when you were alone and how that felt. Turn to someone next to you and just tell them a time when you felt that you were alone. All right? Turn to the person next to you. Group up, that's fine. Group up. A time when you felt alone. Ready? Go. What did you talk about in your groups? Either your story or tell on the other person and tell us their story. What did you guys talk about in your groups? The time you felt alone,
No.
In Serbia, she said when they're giving birth that there can't be husband or man in the hospital. So
really? Alone? Like alone during childbirth?
Alone, all night, only me.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Blanco is
Poor fathers.
Really?
We're sitting downstairs and
The guy, I know. All right. Not that we have to top that story, but does anybody else have another story of when they felt alone?
Well, when we moved in this country, for a time, we feel alone.
What was that like? Where did you move from? What was that like?
We lived in Belgrade, Serbia, and we moved here, and it was New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve, I went in. I came in, and yeah, I knew nobody. Zero. The closest person I knew was the landlord. I saw him twice, and the agent. I saw her twice.
That was it.
That was it. That was like a couple of first day. And then, of course, my wife and daughter were still back home. The apartment I came in was completely empty. I slept on the mattress, on the mat. I didn't even have anyway. Yeah, I was alone.
Happy New Year's. Completely alone, knowing not even furniture, and a map. Wow. What else? Who else has felt alone?
new country, yeah. First couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Of course, friend bring me here, but it was like feeling home. Yeah, few weeks, few days.
Rose, we were talking at dinner, and you talked about how your sister came with you, but not to stay. So after 2 weeks, how did you feel?
I wouldn't say alone because I'm a type of person I've been always kind of a loner in my life. So not alone in the sense that I don't have friends or anything like that, but just I'm used to kind of doing things independently, and also back home we moved often, so I always have to adapt. So I don't think it's based on the situation or where you are with who you are, because I felt alone sometimes between crowds of people. So I felt alone, you know, with my own family members, not like my immediate family members, but so even if you are with people, even if you are in your comfort zone, sometimes you can still feel lonely.
I saw a lot of heads nodding when you said you can still feel alone in crowds of people. I saw a lot.
That's the loneliest places to be.
You know, the World Health Organization has a profile for expats. Maybe I'll bring it up tomorrow. World Health Organization has a profile of 8 characteristics of migrants, which, unless you were born and raised in Slovakia, you're one of us. But migrants, and of the 8 characteristics, I think 7 of them are not characteristics I would like. Increased risk of psychosis, almost double the rates of anxiety and depression, a deep sense of loneliness, I'll have to bring some of those up. And we have all been there. You're in a new country, you know nobody. Well, if the landlord counts, well, the landlord counts in Jesus' eyes. So yeah. When we think of people moving from here, there, and everywhere, this is from the these are unreached people. All right. So the dark orange are followers of Jesus. The light orange are cultural Christians or Orthodox or Catholic, or what are some things that you notice? And this is where passports. So think of these are passport countries of people. What are some things you guys notice about reached people groups and unreached people groups?
In China, you can't really have fake Christianity.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. From China, you can't have a fake Christianity.
But you can't have fake Christianity.
Yeah. What else do you notice?
It's the exact opposite in Europe.
Other Christians in Europe.
What do you guys think of the other Christians in Europe?
Do Catholics are they those counted as Christians?
I think in this study, Catholics were counted as other Christians if they were, registered Catholics. What else do you guys notice?
I would say it looks like that obviously in Muslim Africa, it's the gospel's growing. Now I know you get into the nitty gritty of what gospel, but I think there's a lot of youth and young people there that are coming to Christ.
There's 24,000 member church services going on in Nigeria. Yeah. Where did the migrants in Slovakia, where did they come from? Do you guys know? I'm assuming all over, but is there like a general profile of where migrants come from? It just seems, and I have really limited knowledge, it seems like just in conversations here, a lot of folks from surrounding countries come, and then maybe there's outliers like Americans that come in for teaching, or it seems like there's migration.
Currently, there's a lot of Ukrainians coming in.
Ukrainians coming in. Oh, yeah. If all migrants were in one country, you know what number country they would be in the world as far as population? 3. Only behind China and India. 372 million is the latest. Population of 372 million migrants. 1/3 of those have been forcibly displaced. So 30% roughly of people didn't have a choice of whether or not to leave their country, and they were forced out, not choosing for employment even. That doesn't count as forcibly displaced. Forcibly displaced is either wars or claiming some sort of asylum somewhere, or actually physically forced out of their country. Do you know where of all the continents, all the sections of the world, what's the highest growing percentage of migration? The world hotspot.
I want to say Europe.
It is.
Yeah.
It's Europe. Europe has the fastest growing growth curve of migrants coming into Europe. Europe also has the most diverse. Europe is one of the few places where people literally from all over the world are coming in. And year over year, it's growing even faster. And the new migration data that was out in 2023 in January shows that Europe, there's 2 challenges in migration in Europe. One is more forcibly displaced migrants are coming into Europe, and it's becoming very difficult to control the acceptable migration. Different countries use different terms, but whatever legal migration is, and so there's this tension point. Now, if you have a bunch of migrants coming in, a bunch of expats coming in, how do you think they feel?
Displaced.
Yeah, displaced, lonely,
Hopeful.
hopeful,
Overwhelmed.
overwhelmed, yeah,
Confused.
confused. What an awesome opportunity for us to make disciples, who make disciples, who make disciples. Because there's no better news than Jesus is with you. And there's no better hope to call people to than Revelation 21, where God is with his people, drying every tear from every eye of mourning and suffering and pain is no more. It's an awesome opportunity that God has the international church on point. There are more people now than in the entire history of the world living outside their passport countries. And so the international church is poised for this amazing opportunity that Christians, in a world where we are spoiled for choice of where to spend our attention, that God could use our attention, focus us all on Revelation 21, Jesus coming back, and then we can bring others along for the ride. And I look forward to our time together as we talk about what that's like. How are we disciples that make disciples that are obedient to Jesus' commands? What does that look like in an intercultural context? So that's what we'll be addressing over the next couple times, the next couple sessions. So, good conversation. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Question, responses, thoughts. Now we're going to do a time of Q&R, not Q&A, not question and answer, but just question and response, because only God has all the answers. So we want to see who's discerning. But what are your thoughts? How are you processing this?
Where were you before Dubai, and did that where were you before really affect how you approach Dubai, or did you have to come to Dubai in a completely different sense, just with the amount of different nationalities in Dubai?
Good question. I was just north of Seattle on the U.S.-Canadian border, pastoring a church that was going well, and we're baptizing new people and disciples making disciples. Great, it was fine, and God laid on our heart a really clear vision, and we said, "Okay, Lord, this is the vision you've given us. This is where we're at. We don't see the two are compatible." And after about a year, realized it was time for me to resign with no other option available and just trust God to guide us. So we were talking with different churches around the U.S. I was in seminary 7 years before that in an introduction to world missions class, and I laughed and told my friend next to me, "I'm never going to use any of this stuff. I'm always going to be in America." And that arrogance God transformed over 7 years of brokenness to give me a heart for the nations. So I remember talking with the church in Dubai, and I came back, I said, "Darby, there's this church that wants to reach lost people. They're in a critical spot in the world. There's a ton of expats." And Darby said, "Great, let's do it. Where is it?" And I said, "It's in Dubai." And she said, "Great, let's move to Dubai." Where's Dubai? and God just had wrapped our hearts so much into disciples making disciples, where we thought, you know what? We don't have to go to all these different countries to share the gospel. All we need to do is to train the people that God brings to us. And he's not going to bring us for very long. Average span is about 4 years in Dubai, and then people are sent off elsewhere. So great, let's just focus here. And in that one place, God can reach countries that we can't even go into. So that's how did it impact? It completely rewired all of my thinking when it comes to discipleship. All of the American Western training, I had to just put on a bookshelf, and I had to go, "God, I know nothing. I need to listen, and I need to learn about what you're doing around the world." And I think over 7 years of hard studies, I've learned enough to know I really don't know much. I think that's about where God has me now, to just continue to learn and continue to grow. So I don't really know that much about all this, and I look forward to talking with you over the whole weekend. So, yeah, good question.